Welcome in, everyone, to S4K Talks, and we are on a series called Forces for Good. And today we have Kissena Frazier and Megan Osmond. Megan's my co-pilot in this process. So Kissena is our guest today, and she is a master's level social worker. She's also a first gen college graduate. Congratulations, that's an amazing accomplishment.
Yes, ma'am.
And she is the CEO of AKCESS Granted, which is an organization that really supports marginalized students from under-resourced communities, cut through the red tape to gain access to those resources for higher education and in higher education. So we're so excited to have you on today to talk about this mission.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me, Candy and Megan.
You're
And
welcome.
I am Megan Osmond. I work for Stand for Kind, and I am their community outreach specialist. And I met Kissena at our school safety conference
Yes.
and had lots of conversations with her and loved every bit of it, soaked in all the information she was giving me, asked her a million questions, and took notes. And so I really wanted to have her on here to teach
Thank you.
us a lot about this. So, Kissena, if you're ready, we're going to just jump right in. Are you
I
okay?
am definitely ready. Yes, I am. And thank you so much.
Okay.
And thank you for that lovely introduction, Candy. And I am Kissena. I am coming to you from Buffalo, New York. So far upstate. We don't have any snow yet. Fingers crossed. So that's good. But I am the CEO and founder of AKCESS Granted LLC.
So, Kissena, start us out. Tell us actually how this journey began. Like,
Okay.
what brought this about, and what kind of surprised you? I'm kind of curious about your journey there, and what has surprised you along this journey.
Well, Access Granted basically started out. I am, like you said, Candy, a first generation student. And just a little backstory, I was accepted into an HEOP program in high school. So if all of you don't know, HEOP is for first generation students. They give you access to resources on individual college campuses. And I wasn't like an honor roll student, but I had like 80. So my grades weren't like super good, but kind of mid. And my guidance counselor let me know that I was accepted into this program. However, part of these particular programs, they have what's called a summer bridge component. And if you're not familiar with the summer bridge component, you have to go during the summer. It's usually like a 4 to 6 week program where you actually go to your college campus with other students in the program, and they do different testing just to see where you are academically so that they're placing you in the right classes in the fall. You get to do some fun stuff. The most important thing is that you get to get acclimated to the college campus, meet these students, and have kind of like a head start. I always compare it to Head Start. Like if those Head Start, 3 and 4 year olds, you kind of get the pre to the kindergarten. So very similar to that. So when she told me about this program, all I heard was school in the summertime out of high school. And I said, no way, no thank you. Right. Because I'm like, I've been wet. Right. I need a break before I go to college. And I was always already planning on going to a college campus. However, that particular guidance counselor did not sell me, right, on how this program will benefit me long term. Had she said, Kissena, you were chosen, number one, because we all want to feel special, right? We want to make our students feel special. We want to say you have been handpicked, because really that's what it is. Not everyone is picked. You are chosen, right? You have been handpicked for this excellent program, Kissena, and this is how it will benefit you. And had she had sold it to me like that and let me know that you're going to have a head start, it's going to enhance your social skills. You're going to come in with friends. You're going to be acclimated to this, to this campus, like all of these great things. And the big thing is it is a huge financial component to these types of programs. They pay for your books. They pay for your tuition. It would have been minimal cost. So had she told me that, I would have been like, well, this summer program doesn't sound too bad. You know what I mean? So I am with Access Granted what she was not to me. Now, granted, she was an amazing guidance counselor, but she didn't really guide me on that first gen path. So I created Access Granted because over the years, I am a master's level social worker. I've worked across many spans of social work. I've worked for child protection. I've worked in adoption. I've worked in foster care. I've worked in the school system. And what I'm finding is a lot of educators, they don't have the passion, and they're not able to identify particular resources for first generation students, because we do navigate it differently, right? Like we were having a conversation before we started. I couldn't go
Mhm.
home to mom and say, Mom, I got accepted in HEOP. She would have been like, what is that? I have no idea what that is. You know what I mean? So
Mhm.
just removing the red tape, just like you said, Candy, when working in school districts, higher ed is a whole different beast in itself. There is a lot of red tape and there's a lot of rules. And how I am a rule follower, however, I like to do things the Kissena way. You know what I mean? When I'm in front of a group of students, I want to give them what they need and meet them where they are. And what does that look like? That is fun. That is interactive. That is playing their music, whatever rap music, whatever rock music. I learned a lot from these students. You know what I mean? And just immerse them in, get immersed in their culture, but at the same time, I'm teaching them something. You know what I mean? Education should be fun, right? Like no one wants to just sit there and like, oh, here's this lady coming to talk to us for 90 minutes about how to manage our time. Womp womp. Like, no,
Mhm.
we're using our phones, right? We live in a world of technology. We're including technology. We're using our phones. Their answers are up on the screen. So I said, I want to create something that is going to allow me to do it my way and still make an impact for students. So that is really how AKCESS Granted came about.
So, Kissena, would you say the greatest need of those you serve comes really from this place where you're like, yeah, I was in their shoes. I
Absolutely.
know what that feels like,
I
so
know what
I
it feels
know what
like.
they need.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And the students connect with me because they see the one thing about youth nowadays, um, they see genuineness and they will call you out on your BS very quickly, right?
Yeah.
If you are a teacher and you are just buying your time in these school buildings because you're tenured and you're just waiting to go, they are going to give you a hard time. If they see that you are not genuine, that you really don't care, that it's just a job for you, they will give you a hard time. But they see that I'm genuine. I am relatable. We're singing. We're you know what I mean? I have two 21-year-olds. My daughter and my bonus child are both the same age. So, and I work with high school students and college students all the time. So I can talk their talk, even though sometimes they're like, Miss, we don't say that anymore. And I'm like, you just said it last month. Now I'm not cool this month. Like, I don't understand. But they definitely want someone that is relatable and identifiable, and they want to be able to see themselves. So when I tell my story about my home life, and my mom went to school and didn't finish, and my dad never went, and I got food stamps, you know what I mean? I was low
Mhm.
income, so they're like, oh wow. But here she is. She's an entrepreneur. She's doing these things. She's traveling. People are hiring her to do all these things. Like they're able to see that I was where you are, and you too can overcome whatever barrier, no matter where you live, no matter what hood you come from, no matter your zip code, no matter your parental status, no matter what grandma says or grandpa says. Like I'm a huge motivator for all of the students that I serve.
That is awesome, Kissena. I have a funny story. I was working at a college and I was an academic advisor, and we had a scholarship that came in that had some really specific parameters
Mm-hmm.
on it. And I was actually teaching a course at the time, and it was this person needed to be Catholic, they needed to be Hispanic,
Okay.
and there was and shows like signs of leadership or something like
Right.
that. Well, I was teaching this course, and there was a kid that just popped into my head. I was like, this kid would be awesome, and it paid full tuition.
Wow.
And so I was so excited, and the GPA that they had to maintain was pretty I think it was like a 2.0. I can't remember, 2.0, 2.5. So
It's
it wasn't
achievable.
huge.
Yeah.
It was doable, and I was so excited. And so I went to this kid and I was like, hey, I got money. You know what I mean? And I can pay your tuition, and there's
Right.
this scholarship, and you fit the bill for this, and I'm really excited to give it. And you know what his response to me was?
What?
I can't have a scholarship. I'm Hispanic.
Wow.
And I was flabbergasted.
Right.
I was like,
huh?
what?
What?
And then I was talking to my boss about it, and she calls it reverse racism,
Yes.
where you put yourself in that pigeonhole.
Mm-hmm.
And I loved what you said about, like, you're not listening to what mom said or grandma said, or,
Right.
that this is not possible for
Yes.
you. And you're speaking that language to him. And I was not in a place where I could,
Yeah.
Kissena. I just was
Like taken
flabbergasted and
aback.
said,
Like,
yeah, I was like, why not?
right.
Yeah, I was so confused. I'm like, I got money to give you to advance. And he was just 100% convinced he was Hispanic.
Yes.
And so there was there
Wow.
was no possible way from him and no matter what I could say that said, oh yeah, you can,
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
and you are this, and your
Yeah.
potential is this. He wouldn't. It wasn't coming. I think there's something to be said for someone who's been there in
Yes.
the trenches and
Yes.
teaching that. I just think for me, he wasn't getting it. He was just
Mm-hmm.
like, you're a college professor. You know what I
Right.
mean? He just was like, I'm not
Eh,
going to listen to you for 2 seconds. And he didn't. And I didn't give him he didn't get the
he didn't
scholarship. It
get
was,
it.
that money just sat there. It
Wow.
was so sad. It was like
But then
heartbreaking for
somewhere
me.
along the way, either someone has told him that, right? Because
Mhm.
that's it comes from somewhere, right? But
Yeah.
also look at what society teaches us
Mhm.
as well,
Mhm.
especially in the realm of like social media and things like that.
Mhm.
And even to go
Mhm.
further back to Brown versus Board of Education, I talk about this with my students all the time because I let them know if you go way, 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 way back, this education system was not created for people that look like me. And
Mhm.
over time, you continually see that, you know what I mean? Like you're, like he said, I'm Hispanic. Like, what do you mean? Like, I'm not supposed to, I'm going to graduate and go into the workforce. I hear that from so many students. And that is okay. But go into the workforce with a certificate. Go get a
Yeah.
certificate for a year or 2 years. You know what I mean? Like, there's different avenues. But once again, if these conversations aren't being had, or if the parents don't know to build them up, or if the people in the school system aren't telling them, then how are they supposed to know? You know what I mean? So
Mhm.
that's super sad because he could have been, but it's very hard to change that mindset. You have to have a growth mindset. And if for 17 years someone has continually told you, no, you can't, no, you can't, no, you can't, you need to graduate, or when you turn 18, you're getting out of my house because I have other kids to raise and you're grown at that time, or you know what I mean? So it's just there's so many
Mhm.
different moving parts. But when I
Mhm.
meet students like that, once again, I am building them up. I am pouring into them. I tell them all the time, after meeting me, I am now a part of your network. We talk about the importance of network. I will write a letter on your behalf. I will write a recommendation on your behalf. When they get on these college campuses and they need assistance, they're calling me. I'm emailing on their behalf. So they have a forever friend in me because I want to make sure that not only am I planting the seed, but I'm helping it grow. And I can't do that for everyone, right? But I mean, students do, because I travel and I talk to students all the time. But they definitely use my phone number, and I'm definitely there for them any way that I can be, because the barriers are going to be continually stacked against them. And just because someone tells you no, keep going until you get a yes. Because someone's going to tell you a yes eventually, right? That's
Mhm.
my belief anyway.
Cool. Mm-hmm.
Did you ask her about her surprise? Did you?
Oh, I didn't. What
Oh,
surprised you on this journey, Kissena?
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
I love that question.
Yeah.
yes. What surprised me on this journey? You know, I wouldn't say it was more of a surprise, just because having worked in this field for so long, working in different school buildings, seeing so many different things, honestly, nothing really surprises me. The one thing that I guess I would say that is disheartening is the lack of cultural competence that a lot of educators have when working with students.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
Our students, our first generation students, our Black and brown students, our underserved students, which can be any color, their worldview is completely different, right? Just like you just said, for the Hispanic student, his worldview is completely different. He doesn't think, as a Hispanic young man, that he is worthy of a scholarship, a full paid scholarship to go to college. Now, had you told that to another student that may have looked like you, more privileged, they're like, yeah, like it's that sense of entitlement, right? But then you have this Hispanic student who thinks, I'm not worthy of that. I can't get that. What do you mean, Miss Osmond? Scholarship? So the lack of cultural competence when working with educators, I'm finding, because I've had a lot of educators and people in, the higher ups administrations at universities and things like that. They come to me with different things and like, well, why can't they just, well, all they have to do is, and I'm looking like, and my response is, well, yes, that's easy for you as a
Mm-hmm.
privileged person. But when
Mm-hmm.
you're looking at a student who is a refugee and they've come to this country and they've fled from whatever to be here to come for education and make a better life, they can't just walk into a bank and open up a bank account to cash a check. Their parents are probably still waiting for citizenship and they're here on, you know what I mean? So I find myself always, always, always having to advocate and combat these barriers for students that I work with, because people just don't understand. They think it's just so easy, or they count our students out before they even give them a chance, right? Or they think, oh, they're lazy because they're coming to class and they're not paying attention, or they're falling asleep, or they have different behaviors and they're not understanding their home life is probably super crappy, right? For lack of a better word.
Mm-hmm.
They're not
Mm-hmm.
understanding that they've been up since 6 o'clock because they had to get their siblings on the bus and they didn't even get breakfast because there wasn't enough food. And now they're coming into the school building and you expect them to just be bright-eyed, bushy-tailed. Like, they're angry. They're angry. Why? Because this is what they're seeing in their house. You know what I mean? There's domestics going on in their house. So there's so many different things. And I feel like a lot of educators, they don't give these students grace, or they don't care to understand their why. So I'm always come from a person of not, well, why did you do this? Like, it's like, what happened to you? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You get the girl with the super attitude, and she's labeled as, oh, she always has an attitude and she's rolling her eyes and she's not doing this. So my whole thing is not, well, why are you, because, well, why are you doing this? Well, you're in school and I come with an approach like, what happened to you?
Mm-hmm.
What's going on? Let's talk about it. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? What happened
Yeah.
that is causing you just to have a crappy day? And
Mm-hmm.
when you lead with an empathetic approach, you
Yeah.
get a totally different outcome. Totally different outcome. So I would say, if I had to say one thing, it's the lack of cultural competence, or they know and just don't care, which is
Mm-hmm.
disheartening, because these are the people
This
that are supposed to teach our students.
Yeah, this is super curious to me. And I think sometimes the issues that have gone on in the United States have complicated this
Yeah.
issue. You know what I mean? In the fact that, um, now because I don't have the experience, I'm
Hmm.
not a first generation college kid. I am like a fourth or fifth generation
Hmm.
college kid. You know what I mean? Like
Right, right.
my grandma went to college when women weren't allowed in college. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Or my
Hmm.
great grandma. It was my great grandma,
Yeah.
and she was the only woman in college. That's my background. You know what I
Yes.
mean? And so
Yes.
we come from a lot of headstrong women. You know, we have a
I
lot of
love it.
headstrong women. So I can't actually touch that. You know
Hmm.
what I mean? That's not even in my wheelhouse. But what you touch on that's so beautiful to me is, even though I lack that, and there's nothing I can do to compensate for that. Like,
Right.
I will never be a first generation
Right.
student. That's not even in my wheelhouse. But what I can do is lead with empathy. That
Yes.
is in my wheelhouse.
Absolutely.
I
Yeah.
can do it in a way that's curious. I can be like, tell me about your life.
Hmm.
I can be, you know what I mean? I want to understand.
Hmm.
Yes, like living experience, I will never understand.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Like, I will never
Exactly.
understand that living experience, but I can understand with caring and empathy. And I
Yeah.
think I love that that's how you framed that,
Hmm.
because sometimes I feel like the way it is oftentimes framed in our United States is like, okay, well, you either are or you aren't, and that's it.
Exactly.
You know what I
Exactly.
mean? And you're like,
Eh,
there's got to be a way to bridge that gap, even if I'm never going to have that experience. You know what I mean?
absolutely. Yes.
So I love
And I
that.
love that you use curious, because I sometimes I call it, I will definitely play dumb. And the student,
Yeah.
something is happening and I'm like, really?
Hmm.
Tell me, what does that look like? Tell me a little bit more about that.
Hmm.
And I
Yes.
may know, but that's my way of pulling it out of them, instead of, once again, why did you do this? Why
Yeah.
did you do that? What do
Yeah.
you mean? X, Y, and Z. It's just like you start to be curious. That is so interesting. So you're late to school every day?
Mm-hmm.
Huh. And then you just
Tell
start
me.
to explore
Yeah,
because
tell
they're
me
not
about
going to
that.
usually dependent.
I'm
Because
curious.
the one thing that I learned, especially with Black and brown people, they have a saying of what goes on in this house stays in this house. And I hate to hear that because that comes with so much trauma, so many
Mm-hmm.
secrets. Don't tell this person. Don't go to school telling them we didn't have enough food last night because X, Y, and Z. Don't you tell the doctor when you go and they ask, what is that on your arm? Don't you say you got a whooping. Don't say I hit, that there's just like so much pressure that's put on such young people. I think we forget that they're young people, right?
Yeah, they
So getting
are. Yeah.
them 9 times out of 10, they're not just going to volunteer this information. So like you said, Megan, you got to get curious. You have
Mm-hmm.
to, there's a way of weaving it, getting it out of them. Like, wow. So you're sleepy every day. And I always like to take it back to myself. You know what? I'm tired too. I can definitely use me a nap, but
Mm-hmm.
I can say, but I had so much work to do. I was up until 1 o'clock in the morning doing work. You know what I mean? What were you up doing last night?
Mm-hmm.
Or I am not a morning person unless I'm getting on a flight to go somewhere. I really, really like to sleep in. Like, it seems you like to sleep in too, right? And they'll say,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, miss, but I'm only sleeping in because I was up all
Mm-hmm.
night playing the game. Or mom and dad were arguing last night and we couldn't sleep. Or we were at auntie's house because, you know what I mean? So you have to get very, very creative because kids, they 9 times out of 10, they're not just going to, volunteer that information because they have been coached and they have been taught not to. But once again, that doesn't come from an average person, right? I've been trained in these things. Like I said, I work for child protection. So I was an investigator. So I've been trained in these things. I am a social worker. So I know how to do these things. But some educators, especially those that I've met, have been doing this for so long. It's like the world is changing. The students are changing. The way they're learning is changing. And I feel like as a professional, it's your responsibility to keep up with the times in which you are working, right? Like,
Yeah.
you need to read TikTok, Google,
Yep.
I don't know, something. It's at your fingertips. Once again, you have to also care enough to want to know how to reach these students. And like you said, Megan, definitely, you'll never know the struggle of a first gen student. Your story is different, but you can lead with empathy. You can be relatable, right? Everyone can relate to sleeping in. We all like
Mm-hmm.
to sleep in, you know what I mean? Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's really like not that hard. So the one thing I guess I would say is with, people working with our students, like the lack of cultural competence and just wanting to genuinely help them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
It
Thank
makes
you,
me
Kissena.
think when you talk about some of those questions, the why questions
Mm-hmm.
immediately put someone with an underdeveloped brain into a space of
Defense.
defensiveness.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yes. And then on top of that, culturally, they're being taught to hold all these things close to the
Yes.
vest, right? And
Yes.
not divulge them because then
Yes.
it reflects poorly on the family.
Right.
And we don't need people up in our business kind of situation.
Absolutely.
And then it makes me think, oh, I had another train of thought too. Oh, I lost it.
That's
It'll come back to me. But I think that a lot of these kids too, they're working. They're young. They're being forced into positions of almost adulthood when they're not ready
yes.
and they're tired. They're
Mm-hmm.
helping support their families and, they're not getting enough sleep and they have a lot of responsibility on them. And then they're
Yes.
supposed to come to school and they're supposed to perform and conform a
Right.
certain way. And
Right.
they don't have the bandwidth for it. They're
Mm-hmm.
exhausted. And they do need a lot of empathy. I know what it was. If an educator has outlived their ability in the educational space
Mm-hmm.
to relate to their students, then it is time to bow out and move on. And
I love
that
it.
I don't mean that in a harsh or unloving way at all, but that's your audience.
Yes.
If you're not showing up for your audience every day and
Yeah.
understand where they're coming from, or you've lost the ability to empathize,
Right.
where they are and where they're coming from, and you're not keeping yourself abreast of what's relevant in their
Mm-hmm.
lives, then it is time
It's
to
time.
step
You're right.
away. There's no shame in that.
Right.
You know, it just is what it is. But kids are coming to school today with so many more challenges than they had 10, 15, 20 years ago.
You're right.
We've got technology, so many things, and trying to keep ahead of that and be able to relate to them is a full-time job.
It is.
It's not easy.
And you have to want to do it, right?
Yes.
And then when you get teachers who have been doing this for so long, it's kind of like a rinse and repeat, but you can't do that with this generation.
Right.
And I remind educators all the time, and I even tell my students, I graduated high school in 98. Cell phones weren't a thing. I didn't even have a pager. I didn't get a pager probably till 99, 2000, right? They have no idea what a pager is. But times are different, right? We
They
all
are.
went to school. Attendance was not an issue when I went to high school. Everybody came to school. We came to
Yes.
school. We went to class. Now, when I was in the school buildings, fifth, sixth, seventh graders who attended their attending school half of the year, maybe.
Wow.
And then I'm going, I was like the liaison between essentially the program that I worked for. It was like either you work with me for services or you're at risk for removal. Like it was kind of a last resort. And I'm talking to parents and they're saying, well, he just doesn't want to go, so he just stays here. When did a fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth grader get to tell a parent, I'm not going to school today? Right? But like we're living in a totally different time. So the teachers definitely, like you said, they have to conform. They have to understand these students have been through COVID. Many, graduated high school during COVID. They entered college during COVID. So they're a junior in college, but they're really like a freshman, senior in high school when it comes to their social skills, what they, you know what I mean? The education gap. So there's so many things that this generation has endured that we can't even fathom. But then you get teachers or even parents like, well, back in my day or when I was in high school, that was 20 something years ago, right? There's no comparison. You can't even compare. So I like what you said, Candy. Like if you can't conform, it's time to bow out. But many, once again, they have to work up until retirement or till they get tenured, or people can't afford to pivot, or they're too old, or they don't think that they can. So they're just staying, and they're doing more harm than good, unfortunately, for the students that they serve.
It is super layered and complex.
It is
There's just
very much
not
so.
one reason. There's not one. It's just a very complex situation.
It is.
I think, in the
Definitely.
school building.
It is.
Okay, so if we can get them to school and we can get them to graduate, what is that chef's kiss recipe to help them transition into college life?
If we can get them to school and we can get them to graduate, that's number one. That's super, super awesome. What I find with a lot of students nowadays, their number one is time management. And I'm not even going to say students, I'm going to say adults as well, because I work with or have met adults who still struggle with this. And being able to manage your time, because college is a whole different beast, right? In my full-time job, I work for a pre-college program, and it is my job to make them college ready. That is our theme. College ready. If they're doing something or not doing something, it's like, is this going to make you college ready? Managing your time is huge. Also, I would say, aside from being able to manage your time, they're not mature enough to recognize the long term. These students live in a short term. They live in a 1 minute TikTok video,
Mm-hmm.
Facebook thread, Instagram, they can't recognize the long term. So just even being able to look ahead. I do
Mm-hmm.
activities with students sometimes where it's called like the magic ball, right? Like if I say, Candy, if you can rub the magic ball, what will your life look like, in 4 years or even like next year? And they're stumped. They can't forethink They can't think past tomorrow, let alone the end resort, right? Even if it's just imaginary. I remember a time when we were younger, it's like, well, when I grow up, I want to be, or
Mm-hmm.
I want to live
Mm-hmm.
here, or I want a big house, or remember like the white picket fence and the family and the husband and the kids, and like these kids, their dreams have been taken away from them. They do not dream anymore. And
Yes.
even if it is a hypothetical. I had one student one time, when I tell you she was so stumped, she could not answer. And I had to move on. I said, we're going to come back to you. And she was just like, Miss, I don't know. And I always give them an example. I start with myself. I'm like, in 5 years, I want my house to be in this city and I want this many bedrooms. And when I wake up, I want a personal chef to cook for me because I hate to cook. So the chef is going to be cooking and, my husband is going to be there and I'm going to work at home because I don't want to go to a home office. And my home office is going to have this huge iMac. And like, I'm just giving them like all these examples in their mind. They cannot, you know what
Mm-hmm.
I mean? So definitely just being able to get them to forethink and think past, you know what I mean, like today. Another thing is outside of the time management is getting them to also recognize what you do now can affect you for the rest of your life.
Oh
The
yeah.
decisions you make now will definitely affect you for the rest of your life. If you're getting on this college campus and you are not managing your time and you want to, party and hang out and not turn assignments in on time and you flunk out semester number 1 and semester number 2, now you're on this thing called academic probation. Now,
Mm-hmm.
that FAFSA that you so struggled to do because you're a first generation student and you had to get all this help, now you're going to lose that money. So now you're going to have a huge bill. And we know you can't pay this bill because we know that you're already, you know what I mean? Your little work study job is not going to be able to pay tuition and mom can't pay it and grandma can't pay it. So now you're just screwed, for lack of a better word, right? All
Mm-hmm.
because you
Yeah.
wanted to not take heed of the resources, or you know what I mean, not because I tell students all the time, college is the time of your life. My daughter is a senior now in college. She is ready to graduate, and when I tell you, her balance is impeccable. If you look at her vlogs and her social media, she is partying. She is outside, like the kids say. But she also has a 3.8 GPA. She's involved in clubs. She's involved in our sorority. She figured out the balance, right? So really
Mm-hmm.
just figuring out the balance, because college is completely different than high school. You know what I mean? I tell students
Mm-hmm.
all the time, you're paying to go there. So whether you go to class or not, your professor is going to get paid, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whether you
Mm-hmm.
fail or not, they're still going to get paid. Their check every 2 weeks is going to look the same. They're going to go on with their happy life. It's not like high school. They're not going to call you. They're not going to text you. They're not going to say, hey, Kissena, you didn't turn in that assignment. Yeah, I'll give you till Friday. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Deadlines. Deadlines are important. I preach that to students all the time. I say, you're going to have a professor. If they say that paper needs to be turned in at 11:59 p.m. and
Mm-hmm.
you turn it in at 12:02 a.m., that's it. You're going to have a big fat
Yeah.
zero. And that was 70% of your grade. So you've been going to class all of this time, but because you procrastinated and you didn't meet that deadline, now you have to repeat a class. So not
Mm-hmm.
only do you have to sit in this class a whole semester, guess what? You still have to pay for said class. So now that's another $3,000 or $4,000 on top of your tuition. You know what I mean? So really just
Mm-hmm.
getting them to understand how to manage your time. What does college look like? How can
Mm-hmm.
you balance, the
Mm-hmm.
academics and the, still having a social life? Because it definitely is doable. And every student is different. So there isn't like a particular formula, but these are just always like different tools and stuff that I, work with students on when I'm doing my workshops for AKCESS Granted, whether I'm doing pre-college or college, it really looks the same, because sometimes we think just because students are in college, they have it all, but they don't. Because just because they're on a college campus, that doesn't mean that their communication skills are great. So the same communication workshop that I do with pre-college, I do with college, because guess what? These students
Need
can't
it.
write. They write how they text. They use shorthand. They want to text their professors. They don't know how to draft a professional email. Some adults don't even know how to draft a professional email,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So it really is individualized, but a lot of those, they call them now 21st century skills. It used to be called soft skills, but like they don't have that. So that's one of the main things that I really work on when people hire me to come to these campuses, is to kind of set them up and give them those skills and have these conversations with them, but not just talking at them. We're talking through it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's important. You can't just
Yes.
sit at them.
No,
You,
that's boring.
my son is a sophomore in college, and I was talking to him a couple of weeks ago. I was like, "So, buddy, like, what are you learning right now? Like, what's going on?" He goes, "We learned how to write a professional email today." I was like, "Oh,
Great.
okay,
This is what my money's
great,
paying for. Okay.
fantastic." And then I read an article that came across, and it was talking about how employers right now are firing college graduates because they can't communicate. They don't show up on time.
Oh, yes.
They can't meet deadlines.
Mm-hmm.
It all goes back to communication.
Yes.
They're not effective communicators.
Right.
So colleges, that per this article said that some of the colleges are getting the memo, and I guess the University of Tennessee at Knoxville is getting it, because they're teaching it in his business courses how to
Yes.
communicate.
Mm-hmm.
That is pretty amazing.
It is.
You talked about, okay, so maturity. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. Well, that just comes when it comes,
Right.
right? There's not a lot about that situation. Time management is something you can learn. And a lot of
Huge.
times on campuses, you can go and get support, but there again, you may not know where to go.
Right.
And that's where you come in to help you
Absolutely.
figure out where to go to get the
Where?
support to learn.
Yes.
So those are, okay, that's a great technique. Time management, that's a huge one. What is one of the biggest contributors to them not successfully making the leap besides maturity?
One of the biggest contributors, I would say, is the adjustment socially.
Yeah.
And then that comes with mental health.
Mhm.
Huge. There are so many different barriers that first generation students face just in life, period. So then you put them on a college campus. Socially, many of our students, especially our students going into college within, post COVID, they struggle socially because they did school for 2 years on a computer.
Right.
Some of them, we had some eighth graders that went to high school. They didn't step foot into their high school until 10th grade.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like,
Mm-hmm.
so socially, they're really, really struggling socially. And then with that, then, the transition into the mental health issues that brings upon the anxiety, that brings upon the depression. There's this commercial out right now. I was just telling my fiance, I love this commercial, and it's a mental health commercial. And they're basically saying all these things, like if someone is struggling, like say if I'm like, oh, Candy, I think I'm depressed, or I'm feeling really anxious about something. And then the friend was like, oh, you can't be depressed. That's for white people. What do you mean? You know what I mean? And it's just saying all of these things. And it's basically saying, like, it's okay to feel like this. This is where you get help, right? Mm-hmm. But a lot of them, they're not able to identify that something is wrong. You know what I mean? And that comes with a lot of things. I was reading some statistics the other day, and it was saying that white students are 2 times more likely to seek out mental health than Black students. Definitely understandable.
Why do you think that is?
As you can see, I'm a Black woman, right? This isn't a tan. This is what I look like every day, right?
Beautiful.
In our community, mental health is taboo. Over the last few years, the conversation has started to broaden a little bit more. But there are still some people who feel like, I don't need to therapy. I don't need to talk to somebody. I'm going to talk to Jesus, right? I'm
Mhm.
just going to pray about it. And Jesus is going to fix it. I am a Christian woman, but I also understand I cannot pray away depression.
Mhm.
I can pray every day, but I also need someone to help me with these feelings. I also need someone to give me coping skills. So when it's December and there's 5 feet of snow on the ground outside in Buffalo and it's dark almost half of the day and I'm starting to feel a little crappy because
Mhm.
I am lacking vitamin D because there is no sunshine outside, right?
Mhm.
I need to go to my little toolbox and like, okay, Kissena, you're recognizing that you're feeling like this. What can you do to get out of this? But those conversations are not being had.
Gotcha.
Or especially as Black women, we have to be strong for our family. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
People expect us to be the nurturer, be the doctor, be the wife, be the mom, be the accountant, to do all of these things. And if you say you need help, it's like, why? Why do you need help? I had
It seems
someone tell me
weak.
before, it seems like it's a weakness, right? I'm in the
Mhm.
realm, someone told me before, because a couple of my friends, they have someone come in and like just clean their house because their schedules are super, super busy. They have demanding jobs. And when they come home, they just want to come home and sit down. That is
Mhm.
okay. But I had someone tell me before, like, that's just lazy. You don't need nobody to clean your house. People have been cleaning their house for years. Yeah, so you know what I mean? Because it's seen as a weakness, right? You're
Mhm.
expected to do everything. So that
Mhm.
it's just really what like the conversations are not being had, or the background that they come from, or they're not able to recognize what does anxiety look like, what does depression look like. So they're not seeking out these resources and they're drowning. They're suffering in silence. The resources are on every single college campus, right? But they may not know that, or they're scared to, go because they don't want to let their parents down. You know what I mean? Or like there's just so many things, but in turn that can lead to them having a nervous breakdown, having to take off of semester. You know what I mean? We all understand that like mental health is just as important as physical health. You can get physically sick. So now they're not going to class. So now they're failing. So
Mhm.
now they end up on academic probation. And then there's just you know what I mean? Just a downward spiral, right? So I always say it's very easy to get to college, to fill out an application to get accepted. But one of the things I like to do is give my students the tools to not only get to college, but get through college.
That's
So when
awesome.
that barrier is up against them, they understand like, oh, I'm feeling pretty down today. Let me not listen to the sad music and listen to the happy music. Let me go outside and take a walk. Let me journal. Let me, write 5 things that I'm grateful for. One thing I do with my students, we used to do a check-in and they would tell me like one thing that happened to you great last week. And sometimes they would even struggle with that because it doesn't have to be this big thing, like this grandiose thing. Celebrate
Right.
the small wins. You know what I mean? Like, so
Yeah.
definitely the mental health piece is huge, 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 especially, on these college campuses.
That is awesome. So give us a specific example of a student that you actually like walked through this navigation process.
Oh my goodness. Let me think. So I have one student that I worked with. She was in Buffalo and her family actually moved. So she's a first generation student. She moved to Virginia. And when I tell you she was just she had to be 4'11", like super little feisty little thing, right? She moved senior year. So like summer before senior year. So that was already like made her super anxious because senior year, we all know, is super important. You're trying to figure it out. Like you have all these things. And she was very, very nervous that she was no longer going to have the support of myself and my colleague who was working with her at the time. But once again, I am part of your network. You always have Miss Kissena no matter where you go, right? So she moves to Virginia and now she's at her new high school. Definitely a culture shock because many of the students there did not look like her. And she came from an inner city school. So it was just like, already, you know, a shocking thing, right? But she was a super smart student, and she was in New York. She was already on the advanced track to get an advanced diploma. We have like an advanced diploma, and you have to have so many credits in like the science, the math, you know, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So when she got to said school in Virginia, I'd let her know Virginia is a whole different state. You know, things look different, but she still wanted to be on that advanced track. So she was talking to the guidance counselor. She gets there. She's doing her, you know, her schedule, and they're going through, and they were telling her basically you were a few credits short for your advanced diploma in Virginia because you needed like another year of Spanish or Italian, another foreign language year, right? Mind you, she spoke 5 languages
Whoa.
already, right? So she's like, well, what do I have to do? Like, can I just take a test? Like, I already, you know. And then
Mm-hmm.
this said guidance counselor asked her, well, why do you need an advanced diploma anyway? Why can't you just get a regular diploma? So when we talk about
Let's
the
just lower the
educators,
bar. Let's
right,
just lower
and the
it.
people
Yeah.
that, you know, that work with our students, you know what I mean? And like for me, first of all, I would never say that to a student. Why do you want to? Like, the fact that you want to and you're actually taking the initiative to talk to me and try to figure out how, I'm going to be like, this is so great. Oh my gosh, you are taking control of your education. You, girl, you are the bomb. Let me see how I can help you. Let's figure it out. Let's work it out. But
Mm-hmm.
right off the bat, you have someone downplaying the fact that she wants to get this advanced diploma, saying, you know, so she was super, super discouraged. However, she called me and she said, Miss Kissena, she told me the whole story. And then she says, but you know what I did, Miss Kissena? I advocated for myself just like you taught me. And I told her, and when I tell you, I was so, so proud of her because every student does not have a Miss Kissena, right? How many
Right.
times have a teacher or someone told your, back to your Hispanic student, someone told him that you are not worthy of having a full scholarship, and now he's just believing that he can't have this scholarship and he missed out on an opportunity of a lifetime that would essentially set him up to be able to thrive and be financially stable and take care of his family for generations on, right? She said, Miss
Yeah.
Kissena, I advocated for myself and I told her that I wanted to get an advanced diploma, and if she couldn't help me, then I needed to talk to someone who could. So early in our conversation, what did I say? Someone tell you no, talk to somebody else. Talk to
Mm-hmm.
somebody else. You ever be on a customer service call and they're like, oh, we can't give you that refund because, okay,
Mm-hmm.
that's fine. Well, maybe you can't. Is there a team leader I can talk to? Can I talk to your
Mm-hmm.
boss? Can I talk to someone? Because somewhere down the line, someone is going to be able to do, right? So essentially what I do, she contacted me. I emailed said guidance counselor on her behalf, let her know who I am, that I've been working with her for the last 3 years. She is an exceptional student. She is going to advocate for herself. And what do we need to do to get her where she is, right? Sent her this long email. I said, I am more than happy to get on the Zoom call with you. We can talk it out together. But my baby needs her advanced diploma, right? So um
Awesome.
long story short, she was able to, now all of a sudden now it's a thing, right? Okay, well, if you do one semester of, I think it was like Spanish or something, then then now you're able to get it, right? So she was like, okay, Miss Kissena, I'm just gonna do it, but she had to do it like after school. So then the guidance counselor told her, but you're gonna have to do it after school. And I know that you work at McDonald's after school. So are you really sure that, like, when I tell you I've never met this guidance counselor, but I want to pull up on the guidance counselor in Virginia myself because I'm like, what are you doing? But I said all that to say I was able to find her a pre-college program in Virginia, navigate that process with her on her behalf, so she was able to have someone outside of her school, because obviously understanding that these people in this school are not for you.
Mm-hmm.
And I was able to link her with that and be a part of that. And she is now on a college campus. She actually just called me the other day. She is on a college campus doing absolutely amazing. She graduated this year, class of 2024. So she's just like one of my like
Wow.
best success stories. But when she said, Miss Kissena, I advocated for myself just like you taught me,
Yeah.
I was like, yes, girl, yes, you tell him. Because how dare she tell her,
Right.
why do you want to get an advanced diploma? Oh, you can't. But now when someone else is on you, right? I also CC the principal on that email as well, because I am an email queen, honey. I'm gonna put everybody on there. Somebody is going to give me an answer for my students. So now what was once impossible, now, okay, well, maybe we can, but I said all that to say, yes, she did it. She got her advanced diploma. She is on a college campus right now. She is doing great and amazing. But how many, look, once again, everyone doesn't have a Miss Kissena in their corner. Everyone, they're going to take no, and then they're going to feel defeated, and they're not going to try, and then they're going to give up. And then what does that say, number one, about these educators or the people working with these students?
Right.
And then just for the self-esteem of said student, right? You know, not understanding, because I don't think educators and people that work with young people realize the impact. Yeah. And what you do or don't do can make or break. I look at it as generations, right? Mm-hmm. Especially for our young girls, because they're going to be wives, they're going to be mothers. So if we're not building them up to be okay academically, emotionally, physically, then what are they going to pass on to their children and to their families? If we're not helping them, you know, get a college degree or a certificate or military or whatever that looks like, because everyone's not essentially going to go to college, but something so that they can have a sustainable wage to take care of their family. Yeah. What is that going to look like? You know, so I know we talked about the students not being able to forethink, but I think the adults aren't able to do it sometimes either.
Yeah, you made me think so much too. We were talking about when she was advocating for herself through your teaching, she found her voice.
Yes.
And in the long run, finding your voice is like being given the golden ticket.
Absolutely.
You know, because that's going to serve her wherever she goes in her life. She is going to advocate for herself, and she's going to be able to calmly communicate her needs.
Yes.
And if not you, but if this person isn't going to be able to help her, then she knows her worth enough to be able to go over and find someone else who can.
Yes.
Or she knew you were in her corner. And that is massive.
That is very, very important.
It's just amazing to me. I do have a question for you. It is definitely maturity goes into this, future goes into this, the kids' digital footprint.
Oh, yes.
When you're talking about social media, talking about digital footprint, how is there a part of your program that's helping kids recognize how that can make or break them in certain spaces as they move along?
Yes, Candy, you must have been talking to somebody. How do you know? All right, Candy. So in regards to a digital footprint, like I said, you must have been talking to someone, because AKCESS Granted, we absolutely have a workshop that I travel, and it is one of my most requested workshops, I would say. I have two different versions. I have one that's called Insta TikTok Your Way to Success, and then I have another one that is just called Digital Footprint. So depending on the audience and what the institution or the high school needs. But in this particular workshop, I do talk to students about their digital footprint and how, just going back to what I said, what you do right now will definitely affect you for the rest of your life. In this particular workshop, we talk about brands. We talk about personal branding. We talk about self-esteem, right? We talk about what you're putting out there. I use examples of famous people, because once again, you have to be relatable. I'm not going to just sit and talk. I want to give you some tools, right? So I talk about, depending on the audience, I might take either a rapper or a singer or an actor or a sports person. With the boys, sports always goes over. So like a LeBron James or a Shaquille O'Neal, when we see them and we know their brand and we see all of these endorsements that they have, right? Like companies are hiring them to endorse their product. Why? Because of their personal brand, because of how they carry themselves as not only an athlete, but a business person or a husband or a father, things like that. I let them know that what you put out there can definitely affect your coins, like the kids say, right? Because there have been endorsements that have been taken away. from
Sure.
athletes and from actors and actresses because of the things that they've put out there. So we
Yes.
have like, we do like these pictures, and I give them like recognizable brands like Starbucks, Target, Gucci, Apple, because I said when you see these particular brands, you know exactly what you're going to get, right? When I go into Target, when I travel, I have to go to a Target. Right. Even when I was in Utah, I went to Target while I was there. And I understand that no matter where I go in the world, when I walk into Target, I am going to have a Target experience. I
Yes.
know that on the left or the right hand side, there are going to be the little tchotchkes that are $1 or $2 that I'm probably going to pick up and don't need. I know that 9 times out of
Same.
10, there is going to be a Starbucks so I can grab my Starbucks and walk around while I'm shopping. I know what the lighting is going to look like. I know what that Target experience is going to be, right? Because Target is a brand.
Mm-hmm.
I know on my Apple iPad and my Apple phone that when I text someone that has Apple, the bubbles are going to be blue. And if they
Mm-hmm.
have a Samsung, the bubbles are going to be green, right? That is the expectation. So I relate that to your personal brand. When someone sees Candy, what is your personal brand, right? So I tell them about myself. I am very known in
Mm-hmm.
my city for many, many reasons. Kissena Frazier is a brand. And if you meet me, most people know me from many different things, from me working with kids, from me singing, from me doing all of these things. So I asked them, who are you? What do you want to be known for? And we kind of just have a conversation about it. We're broken up in groups. We're asking each other these questions just for them to see, because I think sometimes they don't understand that they are a brand in themselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then translate that into the school buildings. So when you walk into a school building, who are you? Do the teacher hate to see you coming? Do they know that you have, a scarlet letter on your back? Are you the one that's always giving attitude? Or is the teacher like, oh, I have Candy in my class this semester. I've heard great things about her. She's going to
Mm-hmm.
participate. She's going to, you know what I mean? And then once it gets on the college campus as well. So we go through all of that. We go through perception, because perception is everything. And we do different activities on perception. I show them these different pictures, and it's like, what do you see? And it's one of those pictures where there's two different things. So there's one that's like, you can see an old lady and a young lady, right? And
Mm-hmm.
most students, they're like, I'm like, okay, how many people see the old lady? How many people see the young lady? And then it's a back and forth, like, I don't see it. And then I have a student come up and they're like, well, here's the young lady, but everyone's looking at the same picture, but we perceive it differently. And then I
Oh.
relate that to the workplace. I relate that to school. I relate that to college. Someone can look at your social media and your Instagram, and they're going to form a perception of you that may or may not be true. But when you're
Mm-hmm.
talking about your personal brand, what are you putting out there? How are you branding yourself? Is it in a negative way? Is it in a positive way?
Mm-hmm.
Socially, who are the people that you're around, right? What are you doing with these people? What are you putting out there on the social media? So these are all things that I do talk about. And I also let them know that this digital footprint will follow you. And once again, I go
Yes.
back to celebrities. You know what I mean? There's
Mm-hmm.
one celebrity in particular right now. I'm not going to say his name, but
Mm-hmm.
he's done some horrible things, and he is in the media every single day. And he
We
went
all
from being way up here to down
know.
here, to the point
Mm-hmm.
where his honorary doctorate has been pulled from the institution that gave it to him. His
Mm-hmm.
endorsements, his music, you know what I mean? Which is, hurting his pockets, right?
Yes.
And then
Yes.
all of the people that have been with him and surrounding him and engaging in these activities, their names are being pulled into this as well. And this is years and years and years, right? So these, just making it relatable and getting them to think about it, because I can talk about it all day, but unless I'm giving them examples of,
Yes.
you know what I mean, they can relate to, like, oh yeah, I did see that on Instagram, miss. Oh
Yes.
man, miss, that's so messed up, right?
Mm-hmm.
So just making it relatable and just giving them this information. And that's what makes Access Granted so different, because I am able to meet them where they are, give
Yes.
them these examples, give them the knowledge, and they're leaving. Once again, we're just having a conversation. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? We're talking to our peers, but it's in a way that they're able to put these tools into their toolbox, and
Yes.
then they're able to pull it out when they need to. And it's
Yeah.
fun. We have so much fun doing it.
There's a lot of drama. There's a lot of conflict in schools. There's a lot of hierarchies. There's just so much. And, social media feeds a lot of this
Hmm.
inside those school walls. So, what advice do you give the kids that you're interacting with to be able to handle the drama?
Yeah,
Because it's causing so many adverse mental health effects. There's suicidal
absolutely.
ideation. There's so much. What advice are you giving them to help navigate that? Because it's a big deal. It is
It is
really.
definitely a big deal. And having worked in the school building, I would see it every day. Most
Mhm.
of the arguments or the fights stem from social media.
Wow.
She
Yeah.
said this about me on Facebook. She posted this about me on Snapchat, right?
Yeah.
So during this particular workshop, I do give them tools on how to use social media effectively and positively, because social media it's a great tool. It's a great tool. If anything is good if used correctly, right?
Absolutely.
So
Yes.
I give them different tools on how to use it. We talk about the risks of it, because a lot of times they don't understand the risks of it because they live in a world where it is, their phone is in their hand and they're on it all the time. So just educating
Yeah.
them on the risks of the social media, and then just the positive benefits of it. I also give them websites on Instagram and TikTok to follow, because I
Good.
feel like if they are going to be on their phones, why not have them utilize it in a positive way, or why not have something positive coming up on their news
Hmm.
feed, right? So
Hmm.
even in the school buildings, many school buildings right now, they're banning phones, they're trying to take them away. That is a battle that I want to choose my battles, and that is a battle that I do not want to have with students, right?
Hmm.
So we're using the phones in our workshops, because I'm
Hmm.
not going to say when you come in, hand me your phone, because right off the bat they're going to be like, who's this lady, who does she think she is? No, we're
Hmm.
going to use the phone, because 9 times out of 10 you're probably going to be on it anyway, so let's
Hmm.
use it.
Yeah.
So I understand that you're going to be scrolling on TikTok, you're going to be scrolling on Instagram, so I'm giving you mental health people to follow that are giving you tips, right?
Hmm.
AKCESS Granted.ny is my Instagram. Many of them, I tell them follow me, because on there you're going to find scholarships, right? I'm always, always, always sharing scholarship opportunities, because as first generation students, as any student, they need money. You know what I mean? You can have a full ride to school and still need money, because these scholarships can offset your personal expenses, right?
Right.
I use my daughter's scholarships going in. She needed a MacBook. I got her a MacBook, right? She
Hmm.
goes to school in North Carolina. I live in Buffalo. She needs a
Hmm.
flight home for Thanksgiving. October is usually when she gets homesick and she wants to come home for a long weekend. For Christmas, right? So this scholarship, there, you can never have too much money as a college student,
It's
right?
true.
So I give them scholarship resources, to follow. So it's just really understanding that they're going to be on their phone, they're going to use social media, use it to their advantage. When it
Yes.
comes to the drama, it is individualized, because some students come from, their whole life is drama, right?
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
I've met students that, they're in conflict, continually in conflict, or they're the ringleader, and then I meet their parents, and then it's like,
Ding
now I
ding.
see why.
Uh
Ding
huh.
ding ding.
Yep.
Right? And I can't change grown people, right? I'm not working with the grown people, I'm working with the student. But for
Right.
someone who comes from that, where everything is drama, where no one can just mind their own business, because I tell them all the time, just mind. If everybody can just mind their own business, if this has nothing to do with you, you know what I mean? But they put this, or they said this, and I said this. Well, why did you have to say anything? Well,
Hmm.
because they said it. I'm like, but do you think it's true? Well, no, miss. So if you don't think it's true, then why? You know what I mean? But that's
Yeah.
just all on it's an individualized. It's on an individualized basis, because it's hard, especially with the girls. The girls are way worse than the boys.
Yeah.
Give
It's
me
so
a
hard.
group of boys any day. Because usually the
Hmm.
boys, if they have something, they'll squash it. It's very, very easy to squash 9 times out of 10. And they're
Yes.
just right back to doing their own thing. Girls, ooh,
No, it lasts.
It lasts. It can last the whole school year. It could,
Mm-hmm.
it could last from September until June. They just hang on to things like that. But it has really a lot to do with, you know, their upbringing and their values and what they're taught or not being taught, or what they see at home. Because our kids watch us, right? They
Yes.
mirror our behaviors.
Yes.
If we have a very anxious kid, usually the parent is the same way. And once again, I've seen it. Parents,
Mm-hmm.
they project their anxiety on their kid
Mm-hmm.
many times. You know what I mean? So there's so many different factors. So it definitely really is individualized. But in
Yes.
my workshops, I kind of make it a general
Mm-hmm.
thing, but definitely always having them to seek out. Everyone should have one, you know, safe space in their school building. One
Yeah.
person, whether it's your
Mm-hmm.
favorite teacher, whether it's a guidance counselor, it could be the lunch lady. The lunch ladies are really cool, from what I hear, right? A lot of people, like, they have the little old lady. They might call them grandma, or they're like the
Oh,
auntie, or, you know, they identify with them. But just at least have one safe space, because hopefully when you're having these conversations with these people, that they're telling you how to navigate that in a positive way. Because I would hate for, and it happens all the time, especially with our students. And when we look at the suspension rate, especially the suspension rate for Black kids and white kids, the disparities are crazy, right? But I would hate for this student to be formal for months or suspended, or 3 to 4 days, because now you're losing out on instruction. Now you're
yes.
behind in your classes. You know what I
Yes.
mean? All for what? Because she said that, you know, your boyfriend was her boyfriend, and you like, it just really isn't worth it. But once again, that forethinking, they don't have that. They're not
Right.
able to see, if I respond to this post, or if it carries from home, or it comes from social media and it carries into the school building, and now I'm going to get suspended, and now I'm going to be behind. Like, they're not
Mm-hmm.
able to see that. They don't, their brain does not allow them to think that, you
No,
know,
it's
that far ahead.
immediate in that moment. Like everything is a
Absolutely.
fire. Everything is a
Yes.
fire. Everything is, so incredibly important.
Yes.
Their whole world. And it is really hard. You're right. For
It's
them
very
to
hard.
see outside of it and look at the
Absolutely.
big picture and be like, oh my gosh, okay. And being able to like evaluate it,
Yes. It's
objectively
hard.
evaluate it is so hard.
It's
It's so
hard for adults, you know, and that's
yes.
why I always say, I feel
Yes.
like educators and people that work with students, sometimes we have to give them grace, because their brain is not developed. And you
Right.
think, as an adult, it's hard for some adults to navigate these spaces. There's so many adults that don't know how to regulate their feelings and their emotions at their
Yeah.
big age, that we say, right?
Yeah.
So if you're not able to do it, I'm 44. If I'm not able to do it at 44,
Mm-hmm.
how am I expecting a 14, 15, or 16
Yeah.
year old to do something that I can't even do?
I know. Right.
How can I try to hold them accountable for something that I'm not even able to do?
Mm-hmm.
So what am I going to do? I'm going to help them. I'm going to talk them through it. I'm going to give them the resources. And you can't save everybody, right? Because you can give resources to the end of time, and people are just going to be who they are. But at least try. At
You
least
could
try.
try to teach, try to mentor, try to give the resources, try
Absolutely.
to lead them in the right direction.
Yes.
A lot of times from my experience of working with kids, it's getting in and almost it's like their idea.
Mm-hmm.
Like you frame it where they come to it on their own, sort
Right.
of. You
Yeah.
you punt it, you get it up there, you tee it up, and then you see the light bulb come on, and they're
It's
like,
like, aha.
oh, but they're more likely to do it or
Mm-hmm.
think that way if they think it's their idea. And that's not really
Yes.
trying to be manipulative. It's trying to help them problem solve,
Absolutely.
see things. And I
Yes.
think it's just kind of like that's a helpful stance to take.
Yes.